Hello, everyone. My name is Akash Wasil, and welcome to this fireside chat. I am delighted to introduce you to Habiba Islam from 80,000 Hours. Habiba is a member of 80,000 Hours' career advising team. She previously served as the senior administrator for the Future of Humanity Institute and the Global Priorities Institute at Oxford. Before that, she qualified as a barrister and worked in management consulting, specializing in operations. Welcome, Habiba.
Great to be here.
All right. To get us started, Habiba, I think some members of the audience might not be super familiar with 80K. Can you give us a quick summary of what 80K does?
Yes, absolutely. We are a nonprofit that exists to try and help people into the most high impact careers that they can do. And so we do a bunch of research, and then we have a bunch of specific tools to help people. So the research we put out on the web, so we do like content on our website, 80,000hours.org. We also have a podcast, the 80,000 Hours podcast with Rob Wiblin. And then some of the specific tools that we have are like we have a job board, and then we do one-on-one careers advice, which is the team that I'm part of. So we do like 45-minute calls or sort of something around that length with people to talk through their options and help them out with next steps in their careers.
Nice. Yes, 80K is very comprehensive with career advice. I'm curious to learn more, and I imagine people are curious to learn more about how 80,000 Hours' approach has changed over the last year and why some of those changes were made.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the strategy things that we've done and some of the content, some of the content of our advice. So I guess to start with some of the content of our advice, I mean, that is relatively stable. So there's not been any like drastic changes to what you should do with your career or anything over the last year. But I did want to highlight a couple of things that might be relevant for people. So I think maybe around this time last year, we'd already published our career planning guide, our sort of 8-week planning course. But yeah, I mean, we were just on the cusp of that being more widely known. So that was one of the things towards the beginning of last year. There's this free 8-week kind of career planning course that people can do. And there's like an accompanying worksheet to help people kind of think through what they want to do to pursue impact in their career. So that's one thing. And then also towards the end of the year, we focused more on revitalizing our kind of flagship key ideas series. So that now is like broken up into kind of different modules and different sections. And there's like a few bits more content in there as well. So that's some of the like structural things. There's now like this career planning course, and there's now like a more digestible key ideas series. And then there's a couple of things that maybe have come out a bit more in emphasis in some of this new content. So we have a new piece that Benjamin Todd, our CEO, wrote on the rational case for aiming high when you're trying to do good with your career, so being more ambitious. So that's like that we have maybe relative more emphasis on when people are trying to pick their option to maybe try and do the thing that seems like there's the greatest upside to doing it. We also have really recently slightly changed our list of priority paths, which people might be familiar with. So the paths that we think are like especially valuable for a sort of reasonable amount of people to go into at this point. So we've just recently added becoming the founder of a new project as a path that could be particularly high impact. And we've also released a new piece on China-related AI safety and AI governance paths, which is also now one of our priority paths. So that's like a slight shift. So that's a slight change in some of the particular like careers that we recommend. I think those are the main things on the sort of like, yeah, some of the things that have changed. I think what's driving some of those changes, I think there's a real sense of ambition in the people who are involved in kind of trying to reduce existential risks, or maybe in the wider effective altruism community. And so this like pushes in favor of some of these like, yeah, found a new project and like be ambitious. So that's possibly one of the driving forces of some of those changes. And then I think with the China related to AI safety and AI governance paths, I think those are just like really have always been, I think we probably always thought that those are like particularly useful paths, and we just have more content to be able to kind of explain what seem like good options there. So that's like some of the changes in content. I can talk a little bit about the sort of underlying changes in the sort of strategy or the team, if that's helpful too.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we're very much at a period of expansion right now at 80,000 Hours. So the team that I'm in, the one-on-one team where we do these one-on-one calls, we've hired 2 new advisors in the last year, Matt Reardon and Alex Lawson, who've joined. And so they've now there's more people joining me doing like as many calls as we possibly can to try and help as many people. So we actually had a record-breaking year last year where we did more calls last year than we've ever done on any other year in our kind of 10-year history. So that was great. And we're planning to expand it even more this year and sort of beat that again. And then the web team also hired a bunch more folks, including a marketer. So we're very much on like the, very much on like a growth trajectory at the moment, and excited to sort of to expand the amount of people that we're helping. So yeah, if you're interested in getting a free book, then you can join up to our newsletter. If you're interested in getting one-on-one careers advice, then you can apply to advising as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Very comprehensive overview of how some of the content and how some of the strategy has changed. I'll also plug, I got one-on-one advising from Alex, and it was great. And other people should sign up for one-on-one advising in particular as well. I want us to imagine, Habiba, that we're in 2027, so 5 years from now, and you're looking back at ADK and its strategy and its advice, and you notice that there are some things that were fundamentally wrong, that there was just something that was missing, or you guys were wrong about something pretty important. What are some things that come to mind when you think about that question?
Yeah, this is really tricky, because if there was anything I had particularly high confidence that we were getting wrong, I hope we wouldn't be doing it. But if I can try and imagine what kinds of things we might learn more about that might change what would have been the right thing to be doing right now. I mean, it might be, if there's more research or more thinking in the sort of wider X-risk or effective altruism community that sort of points to a different allocation of resources being more optimal. Maybe that's something that could be that we could be getting slightly wrong if we're getting that emphasis slightly wrong. So I'm thinking the thing that seems most plausible out of all the things here to me is kind of within the realm of people who are interested in focusing on things to do with existential risk reduction or long-termism. Maybe there's some maybe we haven't hit on exactly the right kind of set of things here. Like possibly we should be doing more to push resources further into the future. People have started to talk about kind of patient long-termism over the last few years. Maybe that's a bigger deal than we're currently giving it credit for. Maybe some of the broad approaches should be a bigger deal than we're taking than we're promoting them at the moment. So some of the existential risks, the very targeted kind of urgent stuff, there's maybe relative more emphasis on that than some of these other things. And it's possible that's something that we could be maybe is something that we could be getting wrong. And so we should plausibly we could be pushing more, improving institutions and global governance and things like that. At the moment, I don't think that we're getting it wrong, but it's possible that we learn some more things that mean that that we could be pushing more in a different direction. I think, and I do think that this could be more to do with better, rigorous kind of economic or philosophical arguments or something like that, rather than to do with empirical stuff that we learn about AI progress. Or I just don't think that 5 years is going to be, I would doubt that will be enough to suggest that we're on the wrong track here or something.
Yeah, I think there are two themes about that answer I really like. One is if there were things you were confident that you were wrong about, that would lead to updating what ADK is doing, or at least what you're advocating for. So that's, when you change your mind, you'll implement it, which is awesome. And the second theme seems to be that you're pretty excited about some of the philosophical arguments that might be coming out in the next couple of years. And some of these debates around, for instance, how much to allocate toward existential risk versus other kinds of interventions that could improve the long-term future might be worth looking out for. So I and others will be following that space, and I'm sure you will be as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see more discussion of this. I think, discussions of existential risk are on the cusp of being more in the wider consciousness now. We've had Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, quoting Toby Ord, the author of The Precipice, in a speech to the UN. That kind of thing, wasn't on the cards a few years ago now. And so I think we're on the cusp of getting more minds thinking about some of these problems. And I expect that to come with more ideas and more discussion and debate, which is a good thing.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. Reminder to people in the audience, you can ask questions. We have a few questions coming in. I'll give people a little bit more time to ask questions and upvote questions. But yeah, we will be asking many audience questions. But for another non-audience question, Habiba, I want you to consider a college student who has spent something like 10 to 50 hours reflecting on their career. They're familiar with ADK, maybe they've read The Precipice, and they're motivated to reduce existential risk. They generally agree that AI safety and biosecurity and other priority paths are important. What general advice would you give this person, and what misconceptions do you worry that they might have about their career?
Yeah, great. I mean, someone who spent this amount of time reflecting is in such a great position, and to have done this already as a student, I think you've got such a good head start in being able to send your to sort of really concertedly focus your career on some of the things that you think are the most important. You're like well ahead of where I was at this time when I was a student as well. So yeah, really glad. So I think when one is very early on in one's career as a student and about to kind of go have the first like big job in the real world, I think that can seem really intimidating and like hard to know exactly where to get started sometimes. I think in general it's really useful to take a have this frame of mind that your career is this very long thing. You've got many decades to be working. You've got in fact 80,000 hours of work ahead of you, and probably your most impact. You're going to be most impactful at the kind of peak of your career, when you're like most senior, when you're in your like 40s and 50s, like later down the line, when you're hopefully going to be, have even more knowledge and skills and be even more senior positions and more responsibility. So like taking this kind of long view of your career, I think is a useful frame to have. Maybe that takes a little bit of the pressure off some of the decisions at the beginning, because the point is not to be looking for trying to go like rush straight into like the most impactful like option that you can find right now. In fact, you should be trying to explore which of these seems like the top option for you, paying attention to things like personal fit and like the kinds of conditions in the particular organizations that you're interested in, and then really invest in yourself and build up your skills, get really good at something, and build up your knowledge, build up your connections. Maybe look after things like your mental health. Oh, not maybe, definitely. Look after things like your mental health early on. Sorry, all the way through your career, not even just early on. And also other things like your financial security and stability, like maybe make sure you have a bunch of runway. So like a bit of money saved so that you're robust to things further down the line. So I guess this like take a long view of your career so that early on you like make sure you're focusing on exploring and building up career capital, rather than like too much kind of focusing just on trying to find a thing that's like impactful right now. So I think that would be like, that's like a piece of advice that I'd give people like early on in their career as a student. And then sort of practically, I think the things that you might be wanting to do are like test out some of the options that seem like they're going to be the best fit for you. And if you can do that while you're at university, that's ideal. So if you're thinking about research, seeing if you can do research internships or research projects. If you're thinking about operations, see if you can get experience like volunteering at an EAG or like an Effective Altruism Global conference, or like interning as like a personal assistant or something like that. So you can start trying to get a sense of whether you're going to be good at these various different paths that seem like they could be the most valuable.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these heuristics follow through from thinking about one's career in a longer term. Like, I imagine there might be a lot of students you encounter who feel that existential risks are very pressing and very urgent, which they are, or which they very well might be. But it might be useful to also have the perspective of, okay, if my career is going to be 80,000 hours or 20 plus or 30 plus years, what kinds of things can I do right now to develop skills, to explore? That makes a lot of sense. I wonder, Habiba, if you think there are any specific kinds of skills or any particular types of roles where you feel like people should be more inclined to test their fit in non-EA contexts as opposed to in EA contexts. Like you mentioned for operations, for instance, volunteering at EAG, maybe being a personal assistant for EAs or long-termists, like sort of, at least that's what I'm inferring. Are there particular areas where it's especially nice to test these within EA circles versus test these in non-EA circles?
Yeah, I think in almost every option, in every like career path I'm thinking about, you probably want to be testing them in non-EA circles as well. So for example, research, I think I gave a lot of EA-ish type examples, and probably that was a little bit of a mistake of mine, because I think if you're thinking about research in an academic context is quite different from research in like an EA-ish nonprofit. And if you're thinking about doing an academic career path, you do really need to be good at academic style research, and so you need to get experience of doing that. And if you're thinking about doing operations, organizations. Yeah, I think the example of being like a PA for someone who's like a long-termist researcher that you could do, or like somewhat working for an EA organization while you're a student, is a great way of doing that impact thing kind of early on. But actually, you might even learn more from being able to do like student leadership of like a university group of some kind that's like completely unrelated to EA, because you're getting like team management and budget management organizing experience. I think for most careers you probably want like a bit of both, and like in some cases you might find that you learn more from established organizations that have like really set ways of doing things, and you learn like best practice from there rather than from like some smaller organizations that won't have as much of this in place, and won't have as many mentors who have as much time. There are some specific careers where it's even more important to have the non-EA experience. Like if you're thinking about government or policy, you want to just go get normal mainstream government and policy experience. You want to do like a summer in DC, or see if you can get equivalent experience at like a think tank, or something like that. There are plenty of impactful roles. In fact, probably the vast majority of roles that are impactful in the world are going to be not at EA organizations, because most of the world is not EA organizations, and the world is where we need to get things done. So definitely encourage people to get experience in a variety of different places.
Gotcha. Really good to know. All right, we have a couple of audience questions I really want to ping. One comes from Eddie, who asks, is it still useful to have a one-on-one call with ADK after completing the self-directed 8-week career planning guide? And maybe I'll add to that, if it is useful, what kinds of things do you think the person might get out of it, even after they've done their own planning through the 8-week guide?
Mm-hmm. So yes, I think it probably is useful for people to have a call even after they've done it. And I think I have spoken to some people who have. One of the reasons is, as you do that course, you'll be collecting a bunch of your uncertainties as you go. That's one of the key processes of doing career planning, is actually just like understanding what you're uncertain about, and then trying to work out a plan of attack for how you're going to reduce that uncertainty. So we might be able to help with some of that reduction of uncertainty. So if you have some questions about any of the different pieces, about the course prioritization, or about like your fit for different paths, or what they might look like, or what the best routes in are, or what are the specific bottlenecks in the areas that you're interested in, any of these uncertainties, we could just be useful people to talk to try and help you answer some of those. And then particularly one of the things that we can be most valuable for is helping connect people up to maybe hiring managers or people in the field that they're interested in, maybe folks who were thinking about something similar and are just like a couple of years ahead, and so they can share their experiences of how they got where they got to. And those kinds of introductions and connections, network, can be incredibly valuable, and is not obviously something that someone can, it's something that we can hopefully help kind of give a bit of a boost to someone's career planning. Yeah, so it's also fine if people want to, I very much would encourage people to apply like midway through the career planning process if they're kind of getting a bit stuck on week 3 where they're trying to think about course prioritization. That's also like totally fine to apply then.
Yeah, 2 threads there that seem that I'll reiterate because I think they're really worth underlining. One is someone might go through the 8-week career planning guide, and maybe sometimes they don't figure everything out, and they actually have uncertainties that they've discovered and questions they've discovered, in which case one-on-one advising seems helpful. And then I think the second thing you highlighted is that even if they have like high confidence in a particular next direction, ADK can get them in touch with other people who might be able to mentor them, advise them, give them advice within a particular path. Wow, it seems like a lot of people should sign up for ADK one-on-one advising, and your team has expanded and is still expanding, so there's more capacity. We have a question from Miranda. Miranda asks, considering ADK might have relatively less focus and expertise in certain causes, e.g. animal welfare, global health, should people keen on finding jobs in those cause areas look elsewhere for career advice? If so, do you have any recommendations? Or if not, would you be excited to see an ADK alternative focused on these causes?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So in general, we're most excited to kind of talk to people who are engaged in this process of impartially trying to work out what's the most impactful thing to do with their career, and then and thinking about that in quite an analytical way, and then taking those kind of arguments quite seriously. It means that we are very happy to talk to people who aren't necessarily sure what their answer is to this big question of what does impact mean, and what causes are the most important. So if people are engaged in that process of trying to work out what's the most important, then we'd be happy to talk to them, generally speaking. I think if people are already pretty decided on one of the areas that we just don't know as much about, like relatively in terms of the expertise of the team, like for example, farm animal welfare or global health, then I think probably they are better off being able to get advice and support from other places. So some things that I would shout out are Animal Advocacy Careers has a bunch of resources online that people can use. They have some like career guides. They have a skilled volunteering job board, for example, as like some great resources for people who want to do animal advocacy careers. And then there isn't a specifically global health focused careers organization, as far as I'm aware. And so then it's just very plausible that it would be good to see something in that space that could do something equivalent. But there is an organization called Probably Good, which is new and kind of starting up. They already have some research online and they're planning to do career coaching, I believe, as well. And they are, I think, would be better placed to talk to people with a variety of different interests in terms of like cause areas as well. There's also Magnify Mentoring, which I'm actually on the board for, which is a mentorship organization and previously has been focusing on women and non-binary people and trans people of all genders, but is going to be expanding to be a mentorship organization for people who are just interested in effective altruism and using their careers to do good. So you can look out for when mentorship applications open, and that might be another way of getting some advice and support from someone specifically in the field that you're interested in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's good to know about some of the organizations other than ADK that are doing work that's like adjacent to the space or really relevant in the space. This relates, Habiba, to a question that I've been curious about, and I hope others are somewhat curious about. There seems to be a lot of like informal career advising that happens in EA circles, like between peers and friends and just people who are at similar stages trying to figure out what jobs they might want to take, what skills they might want to learn. For example, at EA retreats, at conferences like the CIRI conference. What advice do you have for members of the community who find themselves like in these informal career advisor roles? How can they get better at helping other people plan their careers and figure out their next steps?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, it's hard to give general advice to everyone. I think, in general, if you're trying to like talk through a problem with someone and help them, it's pretty useful to get a bunch of context for what they're considering. And you want to make sure that you're, I would kind of hesitate for people to give too strong recommendations or anything before they sufficiently recognize what someone's position, like what the kind of context is there. I think that if you're familiar with, you can maybe get a bunch of value out of asking kind of prompting questions and just like helping someone elucidate their thoughts. So just like helping them like think through their reasoning process as to like why they've chosen that particular thing. And then maybe giving them some like prompt questions like, is there like, what are the ways that this could go wrong? What's your like backup plan? Like, how could you be being even more ambitious than this? Like if you knew that you could completely succeed and you knew that that was the case, what would you do then? And like maybe just actually being like a person who can like feed some of these questions can provide a bunch of value. In particular, kind of raising people's ambitions can often be one of the things that really like unlocks a bunch of value, because sometimes just like, a friend saying to someone like, I think maybe you could just do even more than that. Like, what could you do? It's just a great way to just kick someone into like a different headspace sometimes, thinking things through. And then I think that encouraging people to sort of gather a bunch of different opinions seems pretty valuable, especially because I think no one person is going to have the answer for what you should do with your career. Ultimately, you're the person who's going to have to make the decision at the end of the day. And so it's useful to have like some of different people's perspectives. So then if you're in the position where you're one of those people who's giving a perspective, like encouraging them to gather a different, a wider set of opinions seems pretty good. And then maybe the last kind of practical thing is if you can help up someone with the actual implementation and the kind of like turning this into an actionable plan, that seems like it could be pretty valuable. So for example, there are a bunch of like little tips and tricks that are really helpful here that you might be able to help your friends with. Like if someone has been putting something off for a while or not getting around to doing something about it, if you can sort of work out, can we make this thing less aversive in some way? Could we just set a 5-minute timer, and could you solve this problem right now if I'm sitting here with you? Could you just like swap some admin? Like if they're finding it really hard to write the cold email reaching out to someone, could you draft that email for them and they draft another email for you, and then you like swap or something? Those kinds of things can be kind of helpful potentially, and just like being an accountability person could be pretty valuable. So you might even want to suggest that they put some money on the line, so they have to like put in that internship application, and if not, they have to pay you like 20 quid. It can be a pretty good motivator for getting things done. Those are a few kind of scattered thoughts about ways you might be able to help other people with careers advice. Some of them are a bit more for like people who might be like your closer friends rather than sort of kind of informal people that you don't know so well.
Yeah, I love it. Like friends can ask questions like, could you be doing more? How could you make this 10 times more impactful? Friends can help people connect with others, and friends can hold friends accountable. Like perhaps friends have like a unique comparative advantage of being like, hey, I've seen you talking about this thing for a few weeks. Like, can I help you get it done? Can we trade Ugfield tasks? You can do this for me and I'll do that for you. Love it. I'm wondering, Habiba, if you could wave a magic wand and make one change about how people think about their careers. And I know this is a really general question. It would probably depend person to person. And it's hard to be like, well, I would want people thinking more like this, but some people are obviously already thinking enough like that. But if you had to wave a magic wand and put one kind of mentality shift into the EA community in terms of how people are thinking about careers, what would it be?
Yeah, you did a lovely bit of hedging for me. Thank you. I mean, I think if it was the wider world, I probably would want people to think more about impact. But if it's the sort of effective altruism community that we're talking about here, I think, I mean, it does start to get really hard to try and say something that would be like valuable for basically everyone to do, because it is just mostly the case that whatever spectrum you pick, some people are going to be too far on one side and some people are going to be too far on the other side. So I'm like, I think even on this spectrum of like, get people to think more about prioritizing on impact versus getting people to think more about personal fit and like what they're going to find motivating for the longer term. I actually kind of would struggle to know which direction I want like more people in the effective altruism community to go on this spectrum. I think like a lot of the people that I speak to, I feel like I want to nudge them a bit further on the impact side of things. But then there are tons of people who like really don't need that extra pressure and really could do with hearing more of the think about personal fit, think about what you're going to find enjoyable and sustaining. So I think even on the thing that like kind of came to mind most, I actually just feel like I don't know which direction I would want things to go. I mean, maybe being more ambitious, but making sure that you cap the downsides of your options. It feels like the kind of thing that maybe the EA community could do more of, and so it's like plausible that I would go with that. But I'm uncertain that I would actually want to make the wish until I've done a bit more thinking.
That makes sense. And I think we have time for maybe one more question. And we have a really great one from Giselle in the chat, who writes, 80K is mostly directed to people in the early career stage or just starting out. For those who are closer to mid-career and are trying to explore and gradually shift careers or focus more to something that's more EA aligned than what they're currently doing, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I would say that 8,000 Hours very much does want to serve people who are like later on in their career. I think historically the one-on-one advising has skewed somewhat older than, for example, even the web team and the sort of web content has been targeted towards. So we are very happy to try and like provide advice that is both useful for people like mid-career and also provide one-on-one support for that too. I think that as you get further on in your career, you've already like built up a bunch of useful skills and resources and like aptitudes and networks and things like that. So you've built up a bunch of this career capital. So you want to probably be relatively switching more into, instead of like building this career capital to actually like deploying it and like cashing it all in to be doing something really valuable. You probably want to if you can, use the skills that you've already built up and then find like a really good niche. That seems like the ideal option. Like you already like fast forwarded ahead and already have a bunch of really useful skills. So I think the people who have broadly useful kind of operational management type skills that they've built up elsewhere are incredibly valuable if they're interested in sort of things like existential risk reduction or the effective altruism community, because we actually have quite a bottleneck of sort of senior operations people these days. So I think that that's, for example, one area where people mid-career can bring a lot of like valuable kind of management experience and to bear. And so in part, I just want to give people the message that your experience may actually be even more valuable than you think, and actually making a pivot sooner rather than later could actually just be really, really valuable. You may have like, you know, there's not that many people at this cross section of the intersection of the Venn diagram between like caring a lot about these issues and also having like a lot of experience they can bring to bear. So that's one thing I would say is like your experience might be more useful than you might think, and you can switch in to some like senior positions. The other thing that I might say is that it is possible to make pivots in your career and to actually start building up a different skill set if you want to. Harder, but like very plausible, if there's something else that you think is really, really valuable. But I will not go into that too much more because I realize we've run out of time now. But hopefully that was helpful.
Indeed. Habiba, thank you so much. I mean, I think planning careers is one of the most important and most challenging things that people are tasked with doing. And I'm glad that you and others like you are leading the charge and helping people. I am personally jealous for anyone who gets to have you as their one-on-one.
I won't tell Alex.
And Alex is also great. And people who have more questions can join Habiba in GatherTown. And thank you for attending. And Habiba, thank you for offering so much advice, like lots of value per second, I would say.
It was great to be here.